Okay, welcome back. As you can see, I have the motherboard installed. And again, those screws that come with the motherboard, those thumb screws, I've kind of made it zoomed into the RAM and the processor. But those thumb screws, especially you can't see, I'm out of camera probably right now pointing, but those big ones I'm able to get into the easy places and get the board secured in. And then I'm able to use the smaller thumb screws with the screwdriver to get the holes. I actually don't even put all the screws in. I do the 4 outside screws and one of the inside screws next to the plate where the stuff goes secure. I've never had an issue. The board is in there. It's not going to pop out. I've tightened the screws relatively tight, but not overly tight. And so that's really it. And again, installation of the motherboard has a lot to do with the case. I come back to it. If you have a decent case, motherboard installation isn't that bad. I always opt for a roomy, spacey one because it makes it so much easier, because getting your hands in there is difficult. Now, processor first. These are zero force installation sockets of the processor. So these are Intel i3s. There's Intel i5, i7, and they just recently now came out with i5 and i7s with Ivy Bridge. Okay, and I posted a couple things about how much better chip, lower power consumption, transistors, more transistors, all this kind of stuff. And again, if you wanted the latest and greatest in PC products, you'd be building a PC every year and spending about $2,000. It's impossible to keep up. But it's still kind of, so if it becomes a hobby of yours, it ends up being an expensive hobby. Now the processor came, and I have the processor right here. And again, I grounded myself. I'm handling the processor. And really the thing that you can see is there's 2 notches right here. And if you look at the motherboard, there are 2 notches right there. And there's also the marking of the gold little marking on the processor that kind of matches up with this triangle. The thing is when you're putting in a processor, because what ends up happening is when you push down, that's what pushes the spikes back up from here into the processor. In the old days, the spikes, for lack of a better term, pins, would be in there and you'd plop the processor in. And now that's not the case. So I often look just at those two little indentations here. I look closely at the board where those are, and really the processor should just plop in. That's it. There should be no resistance. There should be nothing that it hits. It just plops right in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to close the zero enforcement, and you're going to use a little force, and you should hear a little bit of pop. Although that's not a pop, but a little a sound. It's hard to exactly say what that sound will sound like. I can't mimic it, but you'll hear something, and there'll be a little bit of a force that you'll have to use, and the processor will then be installed. So you just close this. You'll see that this pushes down. It connects to that little screw there, and I'm starting to feel tension already, okay? And I push, I'm getting more tense, and there we go. Okay? And actually, I heard it, but you guys probably did not, okay? And I've taken off the plastic thing. I could have done that previously, but there it is. Okay? That's it. Again, manuals, documentation that came with the processor. It's not that hard. I think we might want to keep it a secret that building a PC is easy. Although you might want to keep that from your family and friends when they demand you building PCs. Now RAM, again, we bought fairly decent RAM. I, again, always like to buy name brand RAM. So G-Skill, Corsair, a couple other ones. If you purchase the no-name RAM, I will see very many issues. The other thing is that when you buy them in sets like this, they are coming from the same product line. They're matched up. They've been run together already, or should have been run together already, tested in a sense, and they're the same kind, from the same manufacturing process, the same line, the same batch, if you want to call it, for lack of a better word. And again, I always like to buy name brand RAM. I know that you could go on Newegg and you can look for and find cheap RAM, really cheap RAM. It's no name. And the 1 or 2 times I did this early in my career when I was a young college student, first learning this stuff, the RAM never lasted, always had problems. And memory errors are just a pain in the rear to diagnose. So again, I would purchase brand name RAM. Duh, can't think. Okay, so basically this is dual channel RAM. And so again, in the motherboard documentation, if you read it, it talks about that it needs to be in DIMM 1 and DIMM 3 in order for the dual channel to work. And again, the RAM has little notches in it, and you see here there's a notch. And so again, this part is shorter than that. That matches up with the RAM. And again, RAM has become an easy thing to put in too. You slide it in. There should be a little bit of pressure. You take the clips. You usually have to hold down. There we go. I didn't push down hard enough. There it goes. Snaps in. Same thing with my second 4 gig stick. Oop. G-Skill thing popped out. Push it in. Right. Snaps in. And we are done. So we have the 2 major components put in. Now, I put the RAM in, I'm going to take it out again when I install the heatsink. Okay? And I'm not going to videotape doing the heatsink because the problem is my head will be over it and you won't be able to see anything anyways because I need to get down there and insert it in. But again, if you read the documentation that comes with it, it's a real simple process. First of all, there is compound on here for heat. And what that does is, again, you can buy this. If you bought like a third-party fan or a non-stock fan, it probably wouldn't come with this. And you would get something called like Arctic paste or something like that. They put it on here for this stock machine, basically, an i3. This fan's going to be very appropriate. We're not overclocking. We're not doing anything like that. But these mechanisms, you basically insert, and these screws, when you turn it, it's probably what you'll notice is that they kind of go in and insert and spread, and it's hard to do unless you're pushing it in. But again, the documentation of installing this is in the Intel retail box. And again, probably the only thing that is surprising to a certain extent is that you have to apply a certain amount of pressure in order for it to click in. Like I said, I'm going to take the RAM back out so that it'll give me more space to do this. But once it clicks in, you screw it once, turn it once, and it should lock in. And the important thing is that it forms a bond, right, with the top of the CPU, because this is going to that's the heat. That's where the heat is going to be generated. The heat's going to go to this, and the fan's going to dissipate the heat. Your fans in your case are going to dissipate the heat, and you'll be set. So again, I've had issues with these. They're not sometimes the easiest. You got to be patient and slow, and that's why I'm going to kind of just stop the video again and do it, because again, my head, you just see the back of my head if I was doing it. I've never done it where I can be like offset and try to screw it in. I have to be right over the processor. So then what you'll notice is we have a fan wiring, and what you'll notice up here in the case, I have, well, you probably, I don't know, depending on where the camera is, there's a CPU thing, four-prong thing where the CPU fan goes in. And it's always important that that's plugged in before you ever power on the PC, because you need the CPU cooled. If the CPU gets hot, this isn't installed properly, or you don't have the fan in, you're going to end up with issues. Okay? So I'm going to pause the video again, and I'm going to install the heatsink. I'm actually going to remove the RAM, install the heatsink, put the RAM back in, and then I'll just talk about, I'll widen out the camera again, we'll put the PCI card in, we'll put the DVD-ROM in, we'll put the hard drive in, and then I'll pause again, then I'll connect everything up, and I'll show you then afterwards with the camera, and actually I handheld the camera, and it'll be easy to see, and you'll be able to see where I put the connections in here on this motherboard, and I'll kind of tour you through that. So it'll be a handheld kind of tour of where everything is connected, SATA, all that kind of stuff, and I'll be able to move the camera around and do that. Again, the installation is not that hard. It's usually figuring out where things go. It's just a matter of plugging in those plugs. We've already had some of this discussion on G+. Okay, so I'm going to pause it again, and actually I don't know if I'll be pausing it. These all might end up separate segments of videos, because I don't know if I'm going to have the time to edit them all into one. So actually these pauses might end up being separate videos where you move on to the next video. So again, any questions after these are posted, please ask them on G+.